Because a lot of these people are just ignorant, poor people. You know, they're just poor people. I'm not a Joe Schmo 9-to-5 worker bee. And these people are just poor dummies. You know, what can you do? I make more money than rappers. I might have bumbled the Barnabas text for the Sinai text or whatever. It doesn't really matter. What matters is I never got a chance to answer any questions or get my voice heard.
So this guy's name is Billy Carson, and he just destroyed his career in the most unbelievable way. This is the full saga of what happened to Billy Carson. Billy is one of the smartest people on this planet, according to him.
Guess what, guys? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders.
He's the founder and CEO of the media company Forbidden Knowledge, Inc., which produces educational content on topics like ancient wisdom, spirituality, personal development, and esoteric knowledge. Billy, similar to his friend Terrance Howard, has built up a reputation for himself as a genius with secret knowledge nobody else knows.
Well, the conventional explanation is always going to the term mythology. They throw mythology around, you know, left and right to cover up the fact that they have no clue or idea. So they turn it into mythology. So if people were supposed to be trying to worry about how they're going to get their next meal, shelter for the night, and all these kind of things, who has time to sit down and write these incredible works of art like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example? I was able to take stone tablets and decipher them myself.
But there are some people who have their doubts about Billy's genius.
So who is this Billy Carson? Much like Terry, he spews ridiculously transparent falsehoods in podcasts and in the crappy books he writes. He just doesn't have the Hollywood resume that Terry does. Instead of starring in movies, he makes YouTube videos that are a mixture of ancient aliens-style archaeological revisionist fantasies.
And then the debate happened.
And he even went so far as to say that he's going to sue the host of the podcast for
$1 million and possibly even more.
In my personal opinion, the conversation did not go well for Billy.
Billy recently agreed to a debate with a guy named Wes Huff, a Christian biblical scholar and apologist.
Well, Billy's trying to sue me, and he's trying to sue me because I got him on a podcast with a real historian who debunked all his BS in terms of Christianity.
And the debate was such a train wreck for Billy that he's desperately trying to stop people from seeing it, which, if you know anything about the Streisand effect, is not working.
And because you got exposed for knowing nothing about Christianity, you freaked out. You freaked out so much that you were knocking at my client's door at 2:30 a.m. in the morning.
Now I got to handle that situation.
With legal papers, acting like you have the power to enforce some type of "you got served."
In the wake of the interview, Billy Carson has asked that the recording not be released.
But we'll talk more about Billy's unhinged response later. For now, let's summarize what happened during this debate. Billy presented 4 of his most famous arguments to Wes, and Wes proceeded to completely and utterly dismantle each one. Billy loves making a very interesting argument about what he calls the Sinai Bible.
Sure, and in my videos, and if you listen to the podcast, the statement is according to the Sinai Bible, okay? According to the Sinai Bible, Jesus wasn't crucified in that Bible. That Bible predates the King James Version of the Bible. And the text there actually is about 12 to 14,000 differences between the Sinai Bible and the King James Version of the Bible, which came much later.
Now, if you don't know anything at all about biblical manuscripts, you might think that what Billy said here makes some sense. You mean there's an earlier version of the Bible where Jesus was not crucified? That's crazy. Except there's just one problem. Every single thing Billy just said there is completely false, as Wes demonstrates to Billy.
When you say the Sinai Bible, what are you referring to specifically?
It's the biblical text that was written. It made it into you can actually look it up on Amazon. It's a Bible called, I have a version at home. It's called the Sinai Bible, right, from Mount Sinai. I'm assuming that's the mountain that they're referencing there. But they put together their own version of the biblical text prior to the King James Version being put out.
Sure. So when you refer to the Sinai Bible, would you be referring to Codex Sinaiticus, like the codex that comes? Okay.
Now, I actually did go and do exactly what Billy said. I went to Amazon and looked up Sinai Bible. And do you know what I found? No results for any Sinai Bible, but results for Codex Sinaiticus. So why is Billy calling Codex Sinaiticus the Sinai Bible? Could it be because he's just completely pretending he has some secret knowledge about the Bible, and he's just hoping nobody knows enough to actually call him out on this? Well, just take a look.
So I work with manuscripts in my linguistic work. I'm an expert on early Christian scribal culture, and particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts. I have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here. And the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. When you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right now to make sure I have the version that I'm looking at.
So basically, the thing that Billy says this Sinai Bible teaches, that thing about Jesus not being crucified, is a complete lie. Because Codex Sinaiticus very clearly teaches that Jesus was crucified. I mean, the crazy thing is that what Billy is arguing here has absolutely literally zero basis in reality. And Billy tries to dig himself out of this hole by suggesting that maybe there's another version, but there is no other version. There's just one Codex Sinaiticus, but it gets worse. Billy then goes on to say, oh, maybe it wasn't the Sinai Bible that teaches the thing I said the Sinai Bible teaches. What I meant was the book of Barnabas.
I found the text where I was referencing, actually. I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
Except the problem is that Billy didn't actually misspeak, because on a podcast with Andrew Schultz, Billy said the exact same thing about the Sinai Bible teaching that.
I give you one big translation that's off, is they say, Jesus was crucified.
Whoa.
Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai Bible.
What happened?
It doesn't exist in the book of Barnabas.
So did Billy actually misquote something? Or is he maybe just completely lying? But what about the book of Barnabas? Is Billy at least right about that? Let's take a look.
The Gospel of Barnabas is a really interesting document because it is a known forgery. It shows no actual indication of evidence of coming from or even having knowledge of 1st century Jewish understanding. And I think a bigger problem is that the Gospel of Barnabas actually paraphrases Dante's Inferno. Never mind the fact that we don't have any evidence of it prior to the 14th century, and none in any other language other than Middle Age Italian and Spanish. It's a known forgery. I mean, no one's referring to the Gospel of Barnabas as anything other than...
If you say it's a known forgery and you're expert, I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit.
What? Billy said, if you say it's a known forgery and you're an expert, I'm going to go with that. I thought Billy was supposed to be the foremost world leader on this topic.
Guess what, guys? I'm one of the foremost world leader in the knowledge on ancient texts and tablets, scriptures, papyruses, and cylinders.
So to summarize, so far Billy has completely conceded, 1, that the so-called Sinai Bible doesn't teach what he says it teaches, and 2, the Gospel of Barnabas, which Billy cites as his source, is a forgery. But it gets even worse. Earlier in the debate, Billy had suggested that maybe Jesus was married, citing texts like the Gospel of Jesus' wife.
And then also, one of the things that were interesting is that they discovered the book of Jesus' wife, which is at the Harvard Seminary, which, according to some scholars, is a little controversial, but they claim that this is an accurate record that Jesus may have even been married, which then, adds more, if that's true, it adds more to the hypothesis that maybe he wasn't crucified.
And after getting destroyed by Wes on the Gospel of Barnabas thing, Billy tried to pivot to talking about the Old Testament. But Wes brings Billy back to this point he made about Mary.
If you say it's a known forgery and expert, I'm going to go with that. Let's talk about the Old Testament a little bit and leading up into the New Testament.
Hold on, because do you mind if I address the Gospel of Jesus' wife?
Sure, go ahead.
What was her name?
Yeah,
I'm like trying to write notes like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just curious.
So the Gospel of Jesus' wife doesn't actually mention. So oftentimes what happens is that the text of the Gospel of Jesus' wife is kind of paralleled with the Gospel of Philip, which mentions that that Jesus would kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth. The reason we know it's also not legitimate is because we can tie it directly to not copying from an ancient text, but actually copying from an online version of the Gospel of Thomas in a PDF form. And the mistake on that PDF form was copied into the text that was borrowed in the phraseology of Jesus' wife. I don't know anybody in the field of papyrology, paleography, historiography who actually refers to these documents as being legitimate.
That's fair enough. I can respect that. So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit.
Wait, what? So again, to quote Billy, that's fair enough. I can respect that. Absolutely no pushback. Just complete acceptance of Wes's argument that what Billy said was just completely untrue. It almost seemed like Billy built his entire career off of spewing complete lies and was just hoping nobody would ever actually call him out to his face and reveal that he either has absolutely no idea what he's talking about or he's a sociopathic liar. But it gets worse. Now Billy is finally able to make his argument about the Old Testament that he's been trying to make for so long. After losing every other argument he's been making, Billy argues that the book of Genesis is a derivative of earlier ancient texts, such as the Babylonian Enuma Elish.
So let's go into the Old Testament a little bit. Predominantly, from my research, I discovered that a lot of information from the Enuma Elish and the 7 tablets of creation is a lot of the, in Genesis, a lot of the creation story that comes into Genesis. Not all of it, but because obviously it's a smaller, Genesis is a much smaller version of a much bigger story. But it's literally almost word for word from the Enuma Elish.
Keep that last sentence in mind. It's literally almost word for word from the Anish. Literally almost word for word. Now Wes asks Billy to summarize the Enuma Elish, and it's pretty shocking just how word for word things are.
Have you read the Enuma Elish?
Yeah, I've done lectures.
Do you mind? Sure. Do you mind summarizing the content of the creation account in the Enuma Elish for us?
Sure. The Enuma Elish is a very ancient text discovered in the Library of Ashurbanipal, and the summary of it is that it really gives us an account, which is crazy, an astronomical account of the creation of our solar system. It talks about planets and moons gaining specific orbits around the sun. It talks about a huge planet named Tiamat, 4 to 6 times larger than Earth. Earth didn't exist at the time that this, according to the author of this text, which is pretty interesting. And then there talks about a nemesis of sorts. In the original version, it's called Nibiru, but in a more recent version, still thousands of years old, the name was changed to Marduk. Marduk is in the Jewish American Library, in the biblical text, in the Torah, and so forth. Very popular figure in ancient times in the religious books and texts. Marduk wanted to be the destroyer, so Marduk is the one that during its next orbit towards Tiamat, crashed into Tiamat, destroyed Tiamat. A huge chunk of it swung away, recoalesced, taking the water, land, and organic material, which basically recoalesced as our planet here, Earth, and the rest of it broke up into pieces. Some of it turned into the asteroid belt. Other parts of it were thrown towards the sun, and some were thrown towards the inner Oort cloud, towards the outer edge of the solar system. This planet, or this moonlet that orbited, supposedly a brown dwarf, basing on the description of it, gained a very strange orbit around our sun. And we have the scientific evidence now also to match with NASA's data, where we see that Saturn and I believe Neptune switch places. Uranus is flipped on its side, and that's more evidence that something came through our solar system in ancient times and gravitationally really tugged at planets here and switched up their orbits and even pulled the axis of a planet on its own side, where the equator is now running north and south. So a little bit of modern astrophysics kind of backs up what this ancient text is saying. But the Enuma Elish also then begins to talk about the fact that these beings, it kind of cuts into the fact that these beings, are on Earth and at some point begin to engage mankind. In other words, they didn't create people from scratch, but they engaged the existing hominid and began to utilize us as workers for their workforce.
It's kind of funny because Billy is so proud of how much he knows about the Enuma Elish, and you can tell he's trying to show off how much he knows about it. And at the same time, he seems to have absolutely no idea that everything he's saying is most definitely not word for word the same as the book of Genesis. And sadly, Wes has to break this news to him.
I'm just curious, when you say that there are not just parallels, but there's actual copying, looking at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, where the creation story is summarized in the Bible, what are the actual kind of parallels there that you're looking to? Because as someone who's read both, I not only do I not find parallels, I actually, and this is the majority of ancient Near Eastern scholarship with me, think that Genesis chapter 1 is actually an apologetic against documents like the Enuma Elish. So what are the parallels there?
Separated the waters from the waters, for example. That's in the Enuma Elish, and that's also in the biblical text.
Okay, that I would agree is a parallel.
You can almost feel how incredulous Wes is here. I quote, okay, that I would agree is a parallel. To recap, Billy said that the book of Genesis is basically a word-for-word copy of the Enuma Elish. And to prove this, he brings up like 1 or 2 sentences. I don't think Billy understands what word-for-word really means.
The only reason I highlight that is that if you're making this the argument, because if you brought it up, and I mean this with all due respect, there are superficial parallels. I would agree. You know, the separation of the water, the concept of the earth being formless and void. That's also in the Enuma Elish. However, I think all the other details, you know, it's the details that make the difference. And if we're looking at not the superficial crossovers, but the actual themes and concepts of what it's saying, you don't have a creation within 7 days.
I'm not going to take the Enuma Elish and put it into the biblical text. There's certain words that they utilize that let me know that they copied it from that text. Like, for example,
so what words?
Separating the water from the waters, the void, the earth being void. That information is literally just copied over. So it tells you that somebody saw that and said, let me add it to this book right here. Or let me add it to the scripture or this papyrus, because it wasn't a book yet.
Notice that Billy is moving the goalposts here. He had originally said that the book of Genesis is basically a word-for-word copy of the Enuma Elish. But now he's saying that it's basically just these 1 or 2 sentences that are the same, which completely changes the argument. And Wes points this out to Billy.
I would say, just with all due respect, the parallels linguistically are not there. There might be superficial kind of concepts that are there, but they're so superficial that we can find them in everything, in the sense of I'm in my office studio, you're in your office studio. That doesn't mean that, you know, that we're the same people or we're even in the same place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. I just see if I have all these texts out, there's a lot of different information that you can see. There's a lot of it's been copied word for word into the biblical text. But
what's the word for word?
Wes tries to get Billy to really define what he means by word for word, but for some reason, Billy doesn't seem to hear Wes's question and just moves on to a completely different topic altogether.
In your version of what you believe in, you keep saying that God's a he.
Yep.
And so where do you get that from?
Now, why didn't Billy answer Wes's question? Why did Billy completely change the topic once again? Could it be because he knows that when his arguments are actually examined by someone who knows what he's talking about, people will maybe learn that Billy is not actually the foremost world leader on these subjects?
I come back to the house. I'm extremely angry and I'm extremely frustrated that I wasn't able to contact him. The money that you thought you were making and the popularity you thought you were making is all going to be spent on attorney's fees. And I don't care if I win or lose. I just want you to spend money.
So Billy was not happy about the results of this debate, and he made a video whining about what happened.
There's going to be obstacles. I just had an obstacle thrown at me yesterday. Some crazy crap happened from somebody that I really thought was a close friend. I really honored this person and thought that they were actually a really, really close friend, to the point where I even invited this person to my own wedding, and I only had 14 people at my wedding. So that tells you how tight that circle is.
This friend of Billy's, Anton Wisbiski, basically started questioning Billy's honesty when Billy told him and others the unbelievable lie that Billy is 70 years old. A good way to lose friends is to lie to them. Billy then continues his rant about the debate.
And this person did some diabolical, backstabbing stuff just yesterday.
Diabolical, backstabbing stuff. Does he mean arranging for Billy to have a conversation with a Christian biblical scholar? Sounds really diabolical to me.
Billy, please explain to me how getting somebody on an interview with you, which we told you about, is diabolical and backstabbing. You knew exactly what you were walking into, but you were probably too lazy to do your own research, because clearly you don't know how to do that. And you didn't look up who Wesley was. And because you came face to face with a real historian and linguist.
And after the debate, Billy went so far as to go to the podcast host's house at 2:30 a.m. to demand him to not release the video of the debate.
Now I got to handle that situation.
With legal papers, acting like you have the power to enforce some type of "you got served."
What's really disturbing about all of this is that Billy is an extremely famous man who has been on Joe Rogan, and he's showing up to a normal person's house in the middle of the night to intimidate him.
But this is like crazy behavior. My client has kids. He has a family. You got this guy walking up at his house at 2:30 in the morning because of a debate that he posted.
And to make things even worse, Billy is now trying to sue Anton.
Why am I making this video now? Well, Billy's trying to sue me. And he's trying to sue me because I got him on a podcast with a real historian who debunked all his BS in terms of Christianity.
Obviously, nobody Billy is taking action against has done anything wrong. Billy is just embarrassed that he lost the debate, and in response, he's desperately trying to silence everyone and prevent people from finding out that he is a complete fraud. But how's that going for him?
But it wasn't long before his fans started turning on him in droves. They were furious that he wouldn't admit to an obvious loss. I had to unsubscribe. It's one thing to be a sore loser, but to not admit defeat means you cannot learn or grow due to no lesson being received. Billy, brother, I really want to see you win, but you're fighting against your own message right now. I hope you can recover from this, but you have to look in the mirror because this behavior is unacceptable. Really? Billy, you should be 100% honest when you discuss what happened. You are not building credibility, and I am a fan of yours. I used to like this guy, but literally 5 minutes into this video, I was done with him. But for some fans, the frustration went even deeper. Several other commenters pointed out something even more troubling about Billy's response. You should take this video down. Most of your fans are poor people. The poor people are the ones who made you powerful.
Short answer, it's not going well. No news spreads faster than the news that someone is trying to stop news from spreading. And that's exactly what's going on right now. John McCrae, who owns the What Do You Meme channel, has a video covering this situation with over 1 million views. And Wes Huff's YouTube channel is absolutely exploding right now, especially after he posted the full debate on his channel, which is also getting tons of views. So it's pretty safe to say that now everyone can clearly see Billy Carson as the fraud he really is. And that is the end of this story. Here's another one you might find interesting.